Hello everyone, it's Jay Robinson here, and I want to share with you what I now believe to be the #1 team generation app on the iPhone, iPad platform. And the reason is because it's taken what apps like TeamShake did and sort of made it even easier to introduce teams and get your classes set up and manage them and manage some of the different situations around when and if they get created and who ends up working with who, and all the different things that I've been asked along the years around TeamShake that were possible but a little bit more difficult and complex to sort of arrange. So if you go into the Teammates app, you can see here a nice, simple, clean user interface, and you get presented with a sample group that you can have a little bit of a play with. Really easy to go in and put your own groups, and you've got a number of different ways in which that you can do that. So I'm just going to give you a quick demo here. If I just call my class PE, and I can do a few different things around importing that class list, and you can see here that I can simply add them individually, or I can add them from a list of all of my own contacts. I can add from a spreadsheet or iDoceo file, and it even has a little video there to show you how. Or if you're using a couple of other tools, such as Google Classroom, you can click on that and then log in, assuming that you've got access to do so with Google Classroom, and you'll get access to your lists of your classes, at which point you can go along and easily import them. Or you've got your pasteboard, and it'll basically let you paste in the names of all of your students and then have them get created. You can see I've actually got a YouTube clip pasted in my board there, so that wouldn't work. But assuming that you've got one of those options, you can easily import your lists and get set up. Now, the coolest part about it is that if you log into the iPad with an Apple ID, and then that same Apple ID is used on all other devices in, say, your department or your school, then all the class lists are going to sync between all devices. That's different to things like TeamShake, where that doesn't actually take place. But this, it does. So you could effectively have one person import all the lists, and then all teachers in your department would be able to leverage that, as long as the Apple ID is the same for all of the devices that you've installed and set up that app with. Now, to show you a little bit more about how it works, we're going to use the sample group here, and I'm just going to start by opening it up. And you can see here that it actually gives you the breakup of the teams and any unassigned students, if there's uneven numbers and so on. And you can go about and do a whole host of really cool things. First of all, in the top right, you can see the option to create teams. So you can press that option, and it gives you a few choices of new teams created by the number of teams that you want, or by number of students that you want per team. So both of those use cases are absolutely relevant in a PE classroom, where sometimes you might want 3 kids per team, so you'd select that option down the bottom, and in other cases you might have a number of teams that you can only accommodate, so you would pick that first choice. But I'm going to go and say by number of teams, by number of players per team, I'm going to say that we need 4 players per team. And you can see a few choices that you get. So do you want balanced teams, all male or female, compatibility? Do you want to take that into account? And I'll show you how you can set these in a moment. And you can see here incompatibility, as in certain people that certain students should or shouldn't work with. You can have that taken into account, and strength as well, whether you want to have even teams and so on. So if I say create teams, it's going to go ahead and randomly produce my teams. You can see here that team 3, because of our uneven numbers, it doesn't have 4 people. In fact, not many of the teams do, because of the number of groups there. But I could easily do the following now and move people to different teams by tapping on and saying, all right, I want them in team 4. And you can see we've now got 4 in that team. Team 5, we've now got that person in team 5. And then obviously now team 3 is all on its own. So that example broke out not as evenly as others, but I might do the following here and say, let's create 5 teams and get a different result. And we've now got 1 student who's on their own. So I could, like I said, move him to team 3 and he would be added into that particular team, which I think is quite cool. Some of the competitor apps that are in this space, they don't have the ability, once the teams are created, to allow you to, dynamically move people in and around teams. Let's say the random creation of those teams comes out and it doesn't really suit what it is that you've done, then it'll actually go ahead and ensure that you can move them around. Now, unassigned students, they are people who, for whatever reason, may be absent for that particular day. So you don't want them going into teams, and you can see here that you can easily make that person absent and they won't end up in teams at all. So I could, in fact, put him in that box, and now we've got even teams. So there's a few tools there to move people, etc. Now, there's also a couple of different ways that you can view teams. So if I click view in the top, I can list like so and show my teams there and the people in them. I could also list by name, so I can then maybe get this out to a group and they could see what teams they belong in. I can also pick a random student. Oops, let me go back to that and go pick random team. There we go. Or pick a random student. There's our random student. And all these other options in here also enable us to showcase different aspects of the teams that we've got. Now, one of the features that I love is the ability to actually create scores. So you can see here that you could be keeping score as teams compete, which I think is awesome because you don't then have to use a separate score app, which is often the case with, say, TeamShake or the other team creation tools. You would need to use another tool for that purpose, but this sort of bundles it all up together. Now, finally, the last thing I'll show you on this page before we look at some of the other advanced features is that if you wanted to save these teams for later, you can select the tools option and you can export the groups to a PDF, spreadsheet, etc. You can even add things like a timer, and you can see down the bottom now that the timer has started. I could hit start, and then obviously the game is playing. We can see the teams, the scores, and the different levels that make that up. The other cool thing, which is again a lot of fun, if you hit Soundboard, you've now got all of these different sounds that you can click on during your games. Let's say you're playing a sport, whatever that may be, you can press the little sound in the bottom and that sound will play just to create a little bit of atmosphere. So there is a pretty impressive suite of tools for managing your teams. What I want to show you now is how you can be a little bit more advanced with who people are compatible with and their strengths and abilities so that you can get more even teams. And in order to do that, you simply need to find the class that is in this list and select the little 3 dots there. If you press that, you get the edit button appear. And you can now update the name of your class and add any more students, remove students, change the colors and the icons. But what I'm going to do is click on the students spot. And if I needed to, I could add them or I could remove them. But I'm going to scroll down, and you would do this during the creation process of your classes or at the end of units or whenever you needed to go in and update the details of those students. But if I click on the first person here, you can see their details, and one of the amazing features is this compatible and incompatible option. So if you select compatible, then they will be put together in the same group as that student in all cases, even when it's a random assortment. This particular student, that student will always end up together. So you could remove that if that was not something that you thought was desirable. And in the same situation, you could obviously, students marked as incompatible will not be put together. So let's say one student in your group does not work with another, then they will obviously always or never end up connected, which I think is a tremendously powerful thing, because a lot of people have that issue with random creation tools, in that you could get two kids that don't work together end up together. And with this, it would be very easy to make that not happen. And then the final thing, which is optional, is also strength. So let's say you wanted balanced teams, you could put in their ability levels like so, and it would ensure that the teams that are random, if you select that option, are taking that into account. And just to remind you, in order to do that, when you hit create teams, you simply need to say whether you want to take into account compatibility, take into account incompatibility, or take into account balanced strength and ability. And obviously, if you go ahead and do that, and you've done all those settings in the background, then you're going to get some, much more balanced and much more teams that are going to be useful in your practice. That is a little quick demonstration of the Teammates app. It is now, without a doubt, the #1 team creation tool. So go and check it out, and let me know if you have any questions.